And one of the first things that we might think of using Copilot for Power BI is to understand how we can leverage its powers and capabilities to actually model and prepare and transform our data ready for analysis within Power BI. So one of the first things I'm going to show off is how we can leverage that within, particularly within data flows. In this example, I'm using Dataflow Gen 2 Dataflow, and we can actually access Copilot within the top right functionality here, which pops open this Copilot pane to the right of us, and it allows us to understand, prompts us with a few questions to ask first of all. So um, within Copilot for Power BI within Dataflows Gen 2, there's a number of things you can do. You can ask it to actually help prepare the data, transform columns, but also one of the features I find really interesting is just to describe what's happening already in the existing steps. So I'm just going to type here, describe what is happening in this query. Now, what Copilot's going to do now is it's going to run through the query as it stands, and it's going to try and understand what's going on within this query and provide back using natural language generation. It's going to provide back a detailed description of what's happening. So if I go through here, I can see fact sales transactions connecting to an Excel file, cleaning and transforming the data, and extract the first 6 characters of the sales order ID. So across these steps, you can see it's then broken down the individual steps and what's actually happening. So if I go to the last one here, we can see here that we're renaming this key. We've obviously created a duplicate of the sales order line key, and we've then extracted the first 6 characters to create the sales order ID. Now, this is really, really interesting. And the reason why I find this interesting is because if you click into the advanced editor, what it's gone through, each of those steps has created this particular LM code around those particular steps. Now, what Copilot has done is gone through and basically provided a description of what each of these steps is doing and within this code. This makes entering things like the advanced editor and understanding M code really accessible to people that are new to Power BI. So, and again, if you are new to a business and you want to understand what's you know connecting to the data for the first time, and you want to understand what transformations has been done to this data, this is a really good way to help you do that quickly. So that's great. So we've now understood what's happening with this data. The next thing I can see here on our queries list, we've got a number of dimension tables, but one thing we don't have is a date table. So we're going to need a date table for our analysis. So it's worthwhile adding it here whilst we're in our data flow. So what I'm going to do is just clean up that and get rid of that for the time being. And then I'm going to just bring across a prompt that I prepared earlier in typical Artec fashion. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just prompting here to say I need to create a data table for my model that ranges from 2020 to 2030. I've asked Copilot to create me a new query for this date table using typical date fields that it can think of. So again, I'm really, I'm not describing all the things that I want to see in here, but I am asking it to take some of its own initiatives. What I have asked though is that I'm going to most likely be joining onto the fields order date key, due date key, and ship date key. So can you include a date integer field? So let's fire that off and see what Copilot returns. Okay, perfect. So we can see here it's created a new query. It hasn't named it anything, it's just named it query, but from what I can see in the preview pane, we've got dates, years, month, quarter, day, weekday, month name, and a data integer. So most importantly, it's interpreted what I've asked it there to create that integer at the end. Now, if I open up the advanced editor, I can see here that the start date and end date that it's created is exactly what I requested, so between 2020 and 2030. And you can see the M code that this is created, that Copilot has created to actually build out this data, this date table. So I'm just going to cancel that off, and I'm going to just change this to say dim date. There we go. Perfect. Now, one last thing is obviously when you're preparing data, I think sometimes it can be you might face a bit of a blank as to which function should I use, or which how can I transform this to work in the way that I want. So I'm going to use one more example here. So let's just clean this up, remove this prompt. So I can see here I've got a field called country and region, and within this field there's a number of different formats for the same thing. So United Kingdom, UK in lowercase. UK in uppercase, UK in a different format. So just loads of different formats for the way that people are putting in the same data. So I wonder if I can ask Copilot to help me standardize the way that this is done. So what I'm going to do is add this prompt here quickly that says there's a field called country region that has values which are similar, such as UK, UK. Let's change that. That looks slightly odd. And United Kingdom. Can you change these to reflect the country acronyms? So let's fire that off and see how Copilot interprets this. Perfect. So we can actually see straight away that Copilot's gone through and actually standardized all of these towards an acronym of just UK. So as at first glance, the result looks good, but what we can do is jump into that again, jump into that advanced editor to just understand what has it done. So we can see here it's created a function called custom, and within this function there is a operations and transformation logic to check each value within this particular field, country, region, to understand whether the text contains the UK, and what it's doing is also making sure that these values are lowercase. So this will eradicate any of the issue where the U is in a capital and the K is in a lowercase, and then returning the UK field. So this is great, but if you start introducing different formats such as U space K, then it won't necessarily be picked up in this. So again, longevity might need some changes towards that in the future, but for the time being, it's done what I've asked, and we can click off that. So that's great. So we are happy with the transformation. So now I can go ahead and publish this, and that's just one of the ways that you can use Power BI Copilot within dataflows.